I want to share my development process for when I do an aggressive push in Xtol. I shared some images last week, and it led to some questions about, hey, will you share your development process, like, in detail? I shot a few more rolls this week, an HP5, a Tri-X, and a Double X. And I did the same development. And I'm releasing 2 videos today, or in the next 48 hours. One with just the sample images from the 3 rolls. And then this video is, I'm going to go through the details of how I developed this at home. But I did want to start with at least one sample image. So this is Tri-X. I'm metering, sort of on one of my cats in the blanket. And then I stopped down 2 more stops. So something like 2 stops underexposed. And then I developed it with the following recipe. All right, I gave it a name. I'm calling it Dan Mars Xtol plus 4 push version 1.0. And I should say right off the bat that, like, I didn't invent this, I guess, right? I've sort of piecemealed it from a lot of different places. But there are definitely people in, like, the Leica Discord group that I should be giving credit to for encouraging me to try specifically around being this aggressive with Xtol. The main reason I'm giving it a name is because my cousin has a film lab, and if you want to reach out to him and ask for this, it's actually offered on the website. So Royal We Film Lab in Oakland. This is actually an option when you're choosing black and white development. And it's called this, Dan Mars's Xtol plus 4 push. I think he's only going to charge like $7 a roll to start off. I think after he does it a couple times and realizes it's a little extra work, he might need to raise his price. But then I'm calling it version 1 because, I know that in a year or two I'll have made some changes and I'll want to be able to come back and make a new video. Okay, so the expected result, right? I gave us a sample image, but I'll just say a little more about, what's the expected result of this development. I'm calling it plus 4, right? That's pretty unusual to, you often see plus 1, plus 2, plus 3, and in the Kodak recommendations, you'll see, for example, for Tri-X, you'll see 400, 800, 1600, 3200. So plus 4 is just sort of my way of saying, like, this is beyond that, right? And I'm not saying that you can underexpose by 4 stops, right? There's a big difference between how much you underexpose the film versus just how much you're going to push through development. And, we'll get to it. So let me just go through my list, if you don't mind. Yeah, so this is not in Kodak's recommendations, right? They, for Tri-X, for example, they only recommend going up to like 0.85 contrast index, where this is going to be 1 or higher. And that's with films that are designed to be like to hit that like 0.65 contrast index. So like a Tri-X, for example. There are other films with more inherent contrast, and I'm not talking about that, right? I'm talking about sort of your more pictorial films. The density range is going to be closer to 2 as opposed to, what's typical. especially for 35 millimeter, is something more like 0.8 to maybe 1.2 a density range. This is going to be 2 or like closer to 2 or more, which means that like a lot of standard darkroom practices would struggle with this, unless you're good with multi-grade or dodging and burning. Right, this is not going to print easily with a like a grade 3 paper. Density, okay, yeah. So then, can your methods handle it? So right, imagine if you've got a density range of something between 2 and maybe even, do I dare say 3, right? So you're talking about 100 to 1. Remember, this is a logarithmic scale, so 100 to 1,000. Right, if you unpack the logarithm. And so I have where I'm scanning with a digital camera that has like 12 stops of dynamic range, right? So my something in the magnitude of 7 to 10 stops, right, of density range I should be able to handle. But it's something to consider, right? Depending on your scanner or maybe what you're trying to do in the darkroom, you might not be set up for a dense negative. Scenes with average exposure range will have considerable shadow detail loss, right? That's like part of what you're going for, is to lose shadows and create a lot of dark parts of your image. Midtones are going to be stretched, and the highlights are going to go. You're jumping on the grain train, and right, you can't do this and then complain about the grain, right? You're doing this partly for the grain, and with increased grain, right, especially in like the densest parts and the most underexposed parts, right, you're going to have massive loss of high frequency sharpness, right? So you don't spend $8,000 on a Apo lens and then do this and complain that the image isn't sharp. There is going to be good to great acutance, assuming that your lens and shutter were sufficient. So first you got to shoot the film. I'm going to recommend, right? I recommend XX, Tri-X, HP5, kit mirror 100, 400, FOMA 100, FP4, and then I put some probablys. Like I haven't tried it. N74, I'm actually going to take it. I don't know. N74 is both hard to find, and I don't know if it would be good. I'll take that off the list for now. So Oro, UN54, or I think you could get it now as NP100. Burger Pancro 400, if you can get your hands on it. I think probably the Lucky Film new SHD 100-400. I have some of that coming in the mail, so I'm about to try it. And then the Ferrania films, I think they're going to work too. I'm going to try them. I've actually got the P33 in my camera now set up for this development. But with Ferrania films, I don't think you can stop down as much, right? They're already sort of putting you right next to the toe. You don't have a lot of room to underexpose. So right, with the P33, I'm only going to underexpose by a stop and try that. And then notice I don't have any T-grain films on here, right? And that's not to say you can't do it with T-grain films, but they're a little more sensitive to getting the right time. I think I need to cut my times back some. And then also, I just don't get that excited about T-grain grain, right? When I look at a lot of pushed images with T-Max or Delta films, I haven't fallen in love with the grain yet. But I'm gonna say that that's right. Maybe something I just need to explore more. Because Because, like, for example, I've seen some Delta 3200 pictures that the grain is incredible. So, yeah, to be continued on all the T-grain films here. Right, so the easy version of this, right, is just to set your meter at 2 to 2.5 stops under box speed. And then that's just sort of like a set it and forget it type thing, right? Just kind of meter like you normally would for average scenes, and that's going to mostly get you really close to the sweet spot. You can sort of more specifically dial in each film, right? For like double X, I sort of like the either 1000 or 1250. Tri-X, at least 1600, maybe 2000, right? For all of these, it's like it's at least 2 stops. I wouldn't do less than 2 stops. And then something like an HP5 can go to more like 2.5, maybe even 3 stops. So, right, there's a little bit of dialing in, but it's like at least 2 stops, and then, right, you can maybe squeeze out towards 3 if you want to try. Now the advanced version, right, is you can't just like think in terms of 2 stops underexposed, go, right? You have to think much more in terms of, and I think I want to make a video where I really go into this in more depth, right? You think about, right, I always know what my development's going to be as I'm shooting a roll, and I'm imagining, right, the exposure density curve that I'm going to get, and then I'm imagining where I'm placing the exposure, right? How much exposure range I have, and where am I putting it on the curve, and why, right? Am I trying to crush shadows? Am I trying to stretch midtones? Am I trying to compress highlights? Am I trying to blow highlights? Am I trying to, right? And then I think about how much, exposure range is in this photo, and where do I want to put it on the curve? And if you go, I'm going to pair this with a video where I show a bunch of sample photos, and I'll talk a little bit about sort of where I'm not just using this basic idea of underexposing by 2.5 stops, but I'm sort of compensating based on what's going on in the scene and what I'm after. All right, so you shot your film. Does it have to be Xtol? Well, this is specifically about Xtol. That's what I've been using. But just kind of generically, right, is like this aggressive push. Like there are other kings on the court. DDX is clearly able to, right, do something similar. D76, ID11, and then probably even HC110. So there's nothing super special about Xtol. At some point I might be able, all right, I actually sort of started my experiments with HC110. I really liked a lot of what I got, but then I've jumped through some different developers, and now I'm to Xtol, and also really liking what I get. And I haven't done the work of like a deep comparison. I will someday, but if I were you, I wouldn't run off and go just buy Xtol just to do this and think that, oh well, I have DDX in the closet, right? Just use what you've got, right? You can do something similar. But I'm specifically right. What I know about right now is Xtol. So about Xtol, it's an ascorbate phenidone developer, and right, it's fun to talk about because when it came out, it really bucked sort of what everybody thought about both ascorbate and phenidone developers. But so Kodak makes it, right, and Kodak is back to being the brand behind their chemicals. So there's you can just buy Kodak Xtol now. ADOX makes XT3, which is basically the same thing. You pay a little more, but it's like zero dust and mix fast, and like to support the company. Probably very high quality chemicals. I've used it and it was awesome. It was great. Legacy Pro, Eco Pro, ascorbic acid. I'm using that right now. The sort of the marketing angle there is that it's better for the environment. And they have taken some things out, I know, like DTPA. with like where this is better for the environment. But you don't, like, it was not dust free. It was harder to mix. It was a little more cakey. And then without the DTPA, you have to start worrying a little bit about, right? The DTPA is in there to, right, to help you with like impurities in your water or even in the chemicals. So I don't quite know what they replaced the DTPA with. So I don't know, but so far so good. It's working great. And then the catch with Xtol is you got to make 5 liters of it. You make it with distilled water. You store it in an airtight container in the dark, and it really does last a long time. Easily 6 to 12 months if it's really airtight. Right. What I do is, like, I have a 5-liter mixing jug that I got on Amazon for like $20, and then I put it into wine bags, right, wine bladders, and I store them in a dark closet, or in a box, right, and it pours easily, and it's very easy to work with. All right, loading the film onto the reels, and put as many as you can get into the tank, right? You're going to use undiluted developer, and there's nothing to worry about in terms of too much film in there, right? Pack it in. I use two rolls of film in a tank meant for 2 rolls. All my liquids are at 85 degrees. Oh, sorry. I put 85 because my developer says don't go over 85, but actually I'm doing 90. I need to edit that. I thought about changing it to 85 because my developer said don't go over 85. But I'm just going to do it. And if I shorten the life of not the developer, the fixer, right? If I shorten the life of the fixer, then so be it. Okay. Now I'm using CineStill's TCS 1000, right, to do my temperatures. Right, why all the temperatures? So, right, why the fixer? Why the water? Why everything at 90 degrees? And the simple explanation is the higher temperatures you work at, right, the gelatin is going to swell more, and that makes it more susceptible to reticulation. And right, reticulation can be triggered by a delta of temperature. So, right, we just want to minimize temperature changes, especially when we're working at hotter temperatures. Why 90? Well, 90 is it's going to increase the grain, but it's also going to drastically reduce the times. Right, we're basically going to cut our time in like half compared to what we would be doing at room temperature. So, could you do it in room temp? Yeah, sure. If you want to try that, I haven't, but you could try it. And my rough guess there is just when I give you a time later on, right, just double that. And by room temp, I mean, right, the standard 68 degrees Fahrenheit. I pre-soak the film with agitation for 1 minute. And again, the water's 90 degrees because I'm bringing everything up to a nice stable temperature, and I want everything to be stable throughout the process. Not more than 1 minute, not less, right? Pretty exact on that 1 minute. I'm going to run out of time to explain the whys of everything, so I'm just going to, sorry. So undiluted Xtol in good shape, and I say in good shape as in, like, some people will, right, reuse Xtol and for way too long, and then they'll, right, so this, I just mean like not like super replenish Xtol. I actually do this as a one shot, right? I use it as fresh as can be. I'm looking for consistent results, highest quality, and I'm willing to pay a little bit for that. Okay, pour it in, tap, tap to free the trapped air. Just, right, agitate for the first 30 seconds. And then I agitate at 30, 60, 90, and 120, right, every 30 seconds. The directions say every 30 seconds, but after 2 minutes, I actually cut it back to just once a minute. And I sort of just do that because that's just kind of what I've always done. I've always just sort of been more of an on-the-minute type inverter. And I've just gotten used to having the 1 minute breaks where it gives me a chance to get my photo flow right and to do a little cleanup and to sort of multitask during those 1 minute breaks. And I find that if I'm doing it every 30 seconds, like I don't feel like I can multitask as well. But there is some maybe, I think the makers of Xtol might be telling me no, really do it every 30 seconds. So we'll come back and I'll see if that makes a difference. The agitation, right? It's you want it to be random, but you want to be able to be consistent with it. I do 4 inversions and with some twisting, and it takes me about 8 seconds. Right, anything that's about what Kodak recommends or what Ilford recommends, right? It's all roughly the same, especially with most modern films, right? They're helping you with there's things in the film that are helping you out to create consistency. And then I do 9 or 10 minutes, and you don't agitate on the last one. Now, I say 9 minutes because I kind of like the 90 degrees in 9 minutes, 90 and 9. And I find that often when I recommend things to people that take 10 minutes, they say, "Oh, well, I don't have time for that." That's too, right? They'll shop online for lenses for 48 hours, but ask them to develop for 1 more minute, and they'll say, "Oh no, that takes too long." So something if you want to call it 9 minutes, call it 9 minutes. That's what I've been doing lately is 90 for 9. All right, then we're gonna do a water rinse for instead of some product for stopping. Right, I just use water. Fill, invert 5 times. Dump, I do that 4 times in about 2 minutes. And actually, I watch that timer. Right, it's I make sure that I'm going at least a minute, and I keep it under 2 minutes for my water rinsing. And a nice thing about it being 90 degrees is it actually is more efficient at washing. I use for a fixer, I use TF4 or TF5. They're both great. Right? TF4 is a little smellier, so if you like that, right. And then if you don't know how to fix, right? So I agitate for the first 30 seconds, and then I check the film. And if it's already clear, then I know that I just need to do that 2 more times, right? I wait till the minute mark, I do 30 more seconds, wait for the 2 minute mark, do another 30 seconds. So that means 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes total, and I'm done. But just in case it's not clear, right? If I'm getting at the end of the life of my fixer, well, then I'll maybe do it a second, 30 seconds, check it again. Okay, now it's clear. So then I'll repeat that 2-3 more times, right? I want to say right. So if you don't use TF4 or 5, I'll say I'm gonna little product pitch is that it lasts for a really long time. You can get something like 30 to 50 rolls per liter over 6 to 12 months, and most people just get rid of it because they feel like it surely it's time. Right? I've only actually had it kind of die off on me 1 time. Otherwise, I'm just accidentally dump it or just replenish because it feels like a nice day to replenish my fixer or get new fixer. But then I'm also reducing the chance of reticulation, right? Again, so that shock to the gelatin can be caused by a delta in temp, but also be caused by a delta in pH, especially in low salt solutions. And so I'm going to not go on too long there, but right, TF4 and TF5 is reduces your chances of reticulation. Another water rinse, again, same thing, and invert 5 times, dump, do that 4 times in under 2 minutes. Photo flow, right? I'm not super exact on pouring my photo flow, but I'm doing something about a 1 to 2 milliliters per 500 milliliters of water. I agitate for 10 times, and then I let it sit for 2 or 3 minutes, and I hang it to dry. So that's it. Again, I'm pairing this with my sample rolls. I'm going to put that in a different video, but release it at about the same time, so you can go in and see example photos with HP5 and Tri-X and Double X. And then I've got some Piranha P33 in my camera now that's going to go through this. And I'm also going to shoot some Lucky new SHD 400. So, and it'll be nice where I can, at the end of videos where I'm sharing photos, I can say, right, I can refer to the development that I used. And if you want to, you can come look at the video. And then there's somebody specifically who had some questions, and I do hope that I've answered them for you. But if not, let me know. All right, take care.